What is up, YouTube? Stocks by the numbers. Welcome back. Wanted to do a quick update video here. I know a lot of people were interested in Luminar Technologies, ticker symbol LAZR, listed here on the NASDAQ. Stock closed $2.74, down 59 cents, roughly 17.75% drop here on the day, hitting new lows of $2.69. And again, not to pat myself on the back, this is exactly what I basically said was going to happen. Even going all the way back here when we first looked at it, up at the 4s, I said it was going into the 3s. That's where the stock pulled back. We looked at the company after hours that day, Wednesday, November 8th, when they posted these earnings. And again, I said that revenue was going to be key. The stock was in this downward channel. As you see, going back several months, the stock has been in this downward channel, and I said that we were potentially approaching an apex here, and we could have a pop out if revenue numbers were good, and as we see, revenue numbers were light, and then here it was, like 330 something, 320 something, and I mentioned that the next stop was probably going to be the next fib here of 310, which as you see, it dropped down, bounced up on Friday, and has really been trying to maintain that 310 level. And then of course you have a day like today where it just completely chunks down here, down 17%, on track for record low close. So again, what we're dealing with here is a situation that was just tremendously overvalued, which is what I was preaching. And when a company makes $60-70 million a year, they're not worth $1 to $5 billion. As much as we may like the story of the company or believe in the company's long-term growth, that doesn't mean that the stock is going to go higher. So here on this big drop, I believe I mentioned in the last video that after breaking the fib of 310, the next stop should be 239 fib, which as we see going out to the 1-year chart here, you can see about 240 now is that low fib level on the 1 year, and in my opinion, it'll most likely drop down to that level and even potentially lower. This was the range that we were in, so if we were to extend our line here on the bottom, I extended the top line, and you can see if we zoom in that it is kind of trying to bounce up and stay above this line, but again, technically it is still overvalued in my opinion, so it could break any time and drop into even the lower twos. But hypothetically, if we fast forward and we try to move out, $1.50, believe it or not, could be very possible. It could be very possible. And I know a lot of people really may not want to hear it. And again, I understand a lot of you may be very upset because you may have bought into a situation like this, $4, $5, $6. Now you're down huge. What the hell? Everything sucks. And again, as much as it hurts to lose this money, your main goal is to learn from this situation. So again, you may not have been on the wrong track looking at companies like this, because 3 years from now, it could be a completely different environment and the stock could be a buy on all levels. But again, when they're near the beginning of that first couple of phases, when they're in that state of infancy, you're better off just waiting and letting the stock come back down to earth before you decide to step in, put your hard-earned money into a situation that is technically overvalued on paper. Basically the same thing with Rivian stock, right? RIVN, EV company, Amazon, stake, whatever. Everyone was pumped about it. At the end of the day, what happened? Well, the company got listed. They had a market cap of like 60 billion, 80 billion or something like that, and they weren't even doing any business. That company just recently started pumping out cars and actually generating revenue. So that's why I would always preach about companies like that. Until they actually begin to do business and bring in revenue, the stock is not a buy. Unless, of course, we're talking about some speculative, biotech, pharmaceutical, small cap stock that's waiting for FDA approval. That is a completely different situation. And of course, if that's the reason why you're buying that stock, then you, I'm sure, understand the risks involved, and the company could sell off for years before they get that approval. But again, when we're dealing with a situation like this company, Luminar, they're bringing their LiDAR technologies to the EVs and everything. Yeah, listen, that's great. And I know everyone's hyped about it, especially because it's in the EV space. But again, if we back up here, we are seeing inconsistencies in not only EPS, but in the revenue side. And we'll come out with a nice beat, and then we'll come out with a big miss like this. And that's what I always preach. Stocks need to see consistency. And even if this company technically was still overvalued in the numbers, that's why I said I had the big green arrow here. And I said, if they happen to come out and beat these numbers, the street may reward them and, pump them back into the 4+ range. And of course, that is not what happened. They missed big, down almost 18% here, new lows. And again, I'm not trying to rub it in. I'm not really trying to hurt my hand, patting myself on the back. But unfortunately, I kind of have to say I told you so. I absolutely nailed this call. And in my opinion, again, I know the company is talking about potentially approaching like $1 billion in backlogs, and that definitely is a huge positive. But of course, that's going to take a while for that revenue to start trickling in. So that's why even right now with the market cap down here at 1.1 billion, unfortunately, I have to say that the stock is still overvalued in my opinion. If we drop down to that 240 level, that'll bring us to sub $1 billion market cap. And if they do have around $1 billion in orders on the backlog, but they are still, losing more than $1 that they're bringing in, we could potentially continue to beat up the stock. However, again, these smaller cap, newer companies, I'd say, in my opinion, they really all should be less than $1 billion market cap. No company should really have north of $1 billion market cap, especially if they're bringing in very tiny revenue or have not brought in any revenue yet. Which is why, again, I don't know necessarily if they're going to crash the stock down to $1. I don't know if we're going to continue to drop that low. But if we continue to sell off and we turn around and the market cap's like 700 million, 800 million, believe it or not, in my opinion, that is completely justified. So, again, I know it may not be what people wanted to see today with their LAZR stock, but, I did try to give warnings about this company over several months. And, it turns out that it was an overvalued situation that was reporting inconsistent numbers, and we did make the right call to stay away from the stock. The problem is now, even though we're trending downward and the stock just tried to reclaim and get above and retest that mid-Bollinger Band, we can see that with today's big drop, chances are the MACD is more than likely going to cross here to the downside and probably break down. That's why I'm expecting like that 240 drop and potentially even lower. The RSI on the daily is now pulled back to 34.5. However, we can see on multiple occasions the RSI broke that 30 benchmark level and stayed there for several days at some point. So unfortunately, the daily RSI is really not an indicator that we can use. I did mention maybe that the weekly RSI could potentially be used as an indicator, but again, we recently dropped down to sub 30. We had a little bounce, and now, of course, we began chunking down drastically. So now with the RSI sitting at about 27.8 here on the weekly, I mean, we could have a little bit of a bounce, maybe back up to like 280 or something, like 283 tomorrow, but chances are it will most likely, in my opinion, continue to sell off and chunk down because it doesn't really have much positives to keep it up at this valuation. That's basically what I'm telling you guys. You can see the MACD now just dropping consistently. And we could bring up the pivot points to see if we have something here in the works. We're seeing nothing on the weekly. Next level on the weekly, 39 cents. Let's hope it doesn't go that low. But we switch over here to the daily, and we can see next support level of 261, which is definitely feasible in my opinion, and unfortunately 205, as drastic as it may seem, could potentially happen. Could potentially happen. You're talking about another 25% drop, right, on 1.1 billion would bring us to what? Between like 7 and 800 million, right? So there you go. I might not be crazy. I might actually have an idea of what I'm talking about here. So 261, I think will happen again. Could potentially be up a couple of cents tomorrow, maybe, to kind of pause it and hesitate it after this big drop. But chances are, when people see big drops like this, they kind of just jump on board and ride the wave half the time. So you could have a lot more added selling pressure coming into the stock. And, again, immediately down to 205, probably not. But there is, in my opinion, I'd give it about a 98% chance that this stock should break. In my opinion, this stock should break 261 and continue down to sub 250. But honestly, either way, again, it's I understand mentioning it's overvalued and again saving us some money on the entry price. Listen, that's all well and good. But again, the real question you should ask yourself is it worth it to tie up the funds now at this current level to currently take a position in LAZR? And the answer really is no. And again, if they are building up that billion-dollar backlog and, estimates down the road are anticipating more and more and bigger and better things, then we could say it is worth owning, but we have to own it at a good price. We have to own it at a fair price. And in my opinion, if we did potentially drop down to like sub 250 into these low twos, then it may be worth rolling the dice and taking a position on, right? Because again, backing up, looking at a 5-year chart here, again, I have to say, unfortunately, it was the stimulus money where everyone just bought up battery stocks and EV stocks blindly and took them up to the moon. And like I said, I could say it till I'm blue in the face, and this is what I preach about. If you don't have the revenue in the business to back it up, the stock cannot go higher than a fake overinflated valuation. Which is why, again, even if they beat earnings here, there would have been a good chance that the stock still went lower. But because it was selling off so much, I figured that if any real big positive catalyst came out, that would force people to have that FOMO fear and jump in and start to buy the stock. And then, of course, everyone will come in after the fact and start talking about how they upgraded it and who's increasing their price target and whatnot. But again, unfortunately, that is not what happened. We went in the opposite direction with the earnings miss, and now we are just riding down. So we had that flash pop out of this descending channel here, and chances are we're going to drop back down into it. And maybe, like I said, if we sell off down into the low twos there, we could potentially be going into right about the end of the year, new year, and the company could potentially find that bottom there, maybe at about that $700-800 million valuation we were speaking about, and they could potentially find that bottom there, and then that's when they can start rallying going into 2024. Because again, even though it is inconsistent, I understand they do bring new technology and decent IP to the table, and they could be viewed as valuable, and they are generating some revenue. So that's why if we reevaluate the situation, let's just say down at $2 a share, then it could potentially be viewed as quote-unquote fair valued, if you will. And that's why I keep saying, why buy a stock up at 4 when we know it's where am I? Yeah. So again, we looked at it back here at 6. I knew eventually it would go lower. So, if you didn't get in, that's what I always say. If you didn't get in on one of these random explosions and get out, then, in my eyes, you're a fool, because you technically didn't even deserve this explosion to begin with. So that's why this whole time, even if people may have been getting hyped that, I was wrong, thankfully for them, and the stock went higher again, as we see over time. I just basically kind of knew what was going to happen, but of course I have to say, in my opinion, or I feel, nothing is guaranteed, so I can't just give an opinion and tell you guys to take it to the bank. This, anything can happen. But again, this is the last time we looked at it here in the 4s. And I mentioned that, we can easily drop into the 3s. And then the key catalyst here was the earnings. And again, the big miss. And that's when I mentioned the test to the 310 fib level, which it broke, of course. And now, next stop, in my opinion, about 240. So if and when the stock actually gets to that price, we can potentially reevaluate the situation. If you're involved in this company and you're just, very stubborn and refuse to sell, obviously in a perfect world, you add to the position. If you can't add to the position, I mean, again, just because I got it right doesn't mean I'm, wishing anything negative against you. I hope that the company completely turns it around, signs new clients, and rallies back up to $10+ for everybody. But unfortunately, again, I live here on planet Earth, and these stocks have to come back to reality most of the time before they can really get to where they're supposed to go. So if you're involved and you're holding, I do wish you well. If you watched my videos, considered buying, but then hesitated because of what I said, I really appreciate you putting your trust in me. Or, if this was the first video you saw and now you're watching it to see if I know what I'm talking about, obviously we can see, again, not everyone is perfect. Not everyone can go 10 for 10. But if we can keep it, 7 out of 10, 8 out of 10 correct, obviously, if we continue utilizing that strategy and seeing those success rates, then obviously months and months and years down the road, you are going to be in a significantly better position than you are currently right now. And sometimes, as we see, again, I may not talk about 1,000 different tech indicators. I may not break down every single fundamental metric under a magnifying glass and make an hour-long or 6-part video series on each stock. Sometimes you just know. And again, I know that difference is really, it falls in the categories of time and experience, which I may have, which you may not have. But again, that's why I wanted to start up the channel, because a situation like this, me, myself, many, many moons ago, may have bought into the hype just like a lot of you did. I may have bought this up at $7 a share, and now I'd be sitting here looking for blood, just extremely upset that the stock is getting hammered, and, it may not have made sense at that time years ago. And of course, learning more about the market, giving it more time and gaining more experience throughout the trades and seeing all the different types of markets over the years. Now, again, I can look at a situation like LAZR back here at 6 or 7 and know it's going lower. I don't get FOMO'd. You know what I'm saying? So that's why, unfortunately, time and experience, if you don't have it, you will get it. But again, that's why I made the channel, to just try to, again, we can't always be right, but if I can try to protect your losses in any way, I'm going to try to let you guys know. But I'll end it there. So once again, stocks by the numbers. Thanks for stopping by. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, drop it down in the comments section. I'm usually very quick to reply. Thumbs up algorithm helps me get more eyes on the channel. And of course, subscribe to the channel. That is our handshake agreement. That's how you help me help you. But more importantly, moving forward, like I always say, I understand that markets are rocky and volatile and very uncertain. So I want to wish all of you success. I hope everyone makes a couple of dollars. Thanks for stopping by. I'll see you guys in the next one.